Why does God allow so much suffering in the world? This is probably one of the most agonizing and complex questions that we can grapple with. And let's be honest, it's not an intellectual puzzle. It's really, really personal. Almost everyone has felt the pain of suffering at some point in their lives. Now, traditional theologies might suggest that God is meticulously controlling every detail of the universe and that every single thing that happens for a reason, according to God's specific plan and his will. But when we look at the world around us, when we see the senseless suffering, the pain, the evil, that explanation feels really unsatisfying, doesn't it? So how do we approach this question? Well, first, let's start with the idea of free will, a concept that's central to understanding this issue. The authors of Scripture claim that humans are made in the image of God. Part of being made in God's image is having the ability to choose, to love, to create. And this is a fundamental aspect of our humanity. But with that ability comes the potential to do harm, to do the opposite. And when bad things happen to good people, it's not because God planned it or willed it or is somehow using it to teach us some mysterious lesson. It's often the result of human free will playing out in a complex and interconnected world. That this world runs according to a real dynamic interaction, not a predetermined script. Now, don't get me wrong, we're not saying that God is powerless or uninvolved. Quite the opposite, actually. Jesus shows us that God is constantly working behind the scenes, all the while respecting free will that he's given his creation. That he reaches out in love to influence our world, but doesn't coercively control everything. That God is not the author of evil or suffering. That God is the one who suffers with us, who feels our pain, and who is always working to bring redemption and healing, even in the worst situations. Now, you might be wondering, well, what about natural disasters or diseases? They're not caused by free will, so what's with that? And that's a great question. And to put it simply, it would seem that the very fabric of creation is impacted by the free will choices of all created beings, not just humans. That it's a complex interplay, and sometimes the natural world reflects the chaos and disorder that results from these choices. That it's part of the risk of a truly free creation. So, why does God allow so much suffering in the world? It's not a simple answer, but a long story short, God values love and freedom so much that he's willing to take the risk of granting free will to his creation. And if that still doesn't satisfy, just consider the alternative. The author, the theologian C.S. Lewis, in his book, The Problem of Pain, he once wrote this: "Try to exclude the possibility of suffering, which the order of nature and the existence of free will involves, and you find that you have excluded life itself." And basically, without free will, Lewis claims our existence would be meaningless. The authors of Christian Scripture are emphatic that in all things, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly, that God is still at work. He's not orchestrating our pain, but he is present in it, working tirelessly to bring about good. And that no matter what happens, no matter how chaotic or senseless things may seem, that God is able to step into our mess and bring something beautiful out of it. That it's an invitation to believe that no matter what we're facing, we're not facing it alone. That God is with us, and he's not just passively observing. He's active, he's involved, and he's committed to our good.